Hey guys, my name is Adam and I'm here with episode number 3 of the News Hub for the 4th of May, 2013. The first topic I have for you guys is Greenheart Games' effective approach to combating piracy with their new game, Dev Tycoon. So this is a game that I have covered previously on the channel in my first impressions video. And what I found really interesting about Dev Tycoon, first off, it's a simulation game where you take on the role of an upstart developer who starts off in your own garage, and then, if you get enough money, you can move into your own studio, and then you can start hiring your own staff, and slowly but surely, you're creating your very own company. Now, the interesting thing about this game is that it relates many problems in the actual industry within the game itself. So you start 30 years in the past, where developing games is very cheap. Then as you move on, all of a sudden, you're starting to pay a ridiculous amount of money in order to actually build moderately sized games. It's crazy how much these new titles are starting to cost. And the game shows this in such an intriguing way that you almost feel sorry when you get a bad game. You feel bad when you do a bad game, because you know what happens then? You have to lay off some of your staff sometimes, and that it highlights so many problems in the industry because of places like Metacritic or any place that gives an arbitrary reviewing system. It can make or break a whole company. It affects people's jobs. That is the bottom line. But the interesting thing that comes out of this is that it relates a lot of things back and forth between the actual game and the industry itself. That being said, Dev Tycoon has done something very interesting in regards to piracy. So, earlier this week, they ended up releasing a cracked version of their game on the popular torrent site Pirate Bay. Pretty much everyone knows of this if you're a gamer. You probably, even if you don't use it, you pretty much know of torrent sites. They're unfortunately a part of the industry, but I hope that they die off. That's all that I have to say about it. Nonetheless, they ended up uploading their own cracked version on the Pirate Bay, but they did a minor variation to the code. The cracked version would cause pirates to get the following message. Sales report. Boss, it seems that while many players play our new game, they steal it by downloading a cracked version rather than buying it legally. If players don't buy the games they like, we will sooner or later go bankrupt. What an interesting message. What a great message, because, again, they are bringing something from the game into real life. Their game got so hit with piracy, and it's an $8 game. You need to think about this, and think about how much trouble big game companies have, like Ubisoft, like EA. All these other companies, they have a lot of trouble dealing with piracy, and this game had so much trouble dealing with piracy. It's so interesting to me the way that the community actually reacted. All the pirates at least reacted in a very specific way, and it happened over and over. So I'm going to read you a quote from one of the pirates that ended up posting on a forum to see if he could get this problem resolved, because nobody actually knew that Greenheart Games did this. Here's a quote from them. Is there some way to avoid piracy? I mean, can I research DRM or something? Another said, why are there so many people that pirate? It ruins me. Not fair. It's so bizarre, because the only people who would have access to this game are the people that pirated it in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. And this is the true problem with people. They don't realize the harm they're doing, especially to a small company developer like Greenheart Games, because they're very small and they need to get a lot of profit from games in order to make their next one. It's how the industry works. You can't just take everything you want for free. It's not how it works. You're getting a product and you need to pay for it. There's a lot of issues in the industry revolving around that. And quite frankly, I hope that the piracy of games ends up dying and we can move on past that, because quite frankly, I like a lot of these games and I'm very willing to pay for them, and I want a lot more to be made in the future. The next bit of news I want to cover is the release of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Now, I covered this in my last News Hub, and I talked about how their Uplay system was hacked, and Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon was leaked a little bit ahead of schedule, and I wanted to do a bit of a follow-up. So, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon came out a couple days ago, and it certainly delivered exactly what it set out to do. It gave you an 80s experience that highlighted just the complete idiocy and funny topics that came from the 80s. The game is a parody of itself, and it truly shows through all the gameplay that has been shown, through all the game's story. They make it a very casual and enjoyable experience for everybody, and I was honestly surprised at how well this game actually was received. It got a lot of positive reviews, and it's something that is really not done in the industry today. You don't see games that have AAA quality and are only $15. It's a very rare occurrence, and the only reason we got it this time was because many of the assets, in fact pretty much all the assets used in Blood Dragon, were from the original Far Cry 3 base game. Is that wrong? No, not at all, because quite frankly, the developer wanted to give us a little something extra, and the game is very much so different from anything that Far Cry 3 offered in the past. Honestly, if you're going to be inventive and you're going to change how the game actually plays, I don't have a problem with you releasing and charging $15 for it. This was not a full-priced release, so I really am happy with how Ubisoft played this. I think they've done a great job. And I honestly think that sales will be very good for this game. It's only a couple days in and we don't really know the sales figures yet, but I honestly think that Far Cry 3 will be a fantastic success and Blood Dragon will be very, very successful for them. But before I move on to the next topic, I really want to just point this out. The game was leaked early. And unfortunately for Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, it will hurt the sales. Unfortunately for Ubisoft, unfortunately for the title as a whole. Because of that leak, I have a strong feeling that a lot of people are going to not want the title. And it's not even for the fact that the title's not good. It's more so just they saw it early already, and they've already got their fix because a lot of content was leaked, and it was posted all over the web. So unfortunately, it's very possible that sales will be lower than many of us expect. It's very unfortunate, especially with a game like this. I hope it sells well, because if we can get some AAA quality titles at a lower price using assets from previous games by the publisher or developer, then I'm all for that, and I wish Ubisoft the best of luck, because this is possibly one of their best games that they've released. Far Cry 3 was fantastic, and putting Far Cry 3 in a very, very odd, futuristic 80s setting is just fantastic. I'm very impressed with the work they've managed on this, but let's move on to the next topic. TimeGate Studio, the popular developer behind Section 8 and the very controversial Aliens Colonial Marines, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection following constant legal trouble. Now here's the thing, if you don't know about the Aliens drama or the Aliens scandal, whatever you want to call it, the Colonial Marines scandal nonetheless, what ended up happening was the developers and publishers behind Aliens Colonial Marines ended up showing a trailer and demo, all of their content that they released before the game actually came out, and it showed the game in a much better way than it actually turned out to be. Obviously, trailers are supposed to show the game in a positive light, but most of what the demo even showed was completely fabricated and none of it existed. It was purely there to make people buy the game on release and give them their money as quickly as possible. This has actually gone all the way to a class action lawsuit against Gearbox and Sega for false advertising on Colonial Marines. The interesting thing, though, is that TimeGate has not been reported to be included in that lawsuit, so we have to wonder what actually pushed them over the edge. Well, the thing we have to look at is right after a developer puts a lot of time and a lot of money into a game, and it does very poorly, and it's trashed, and the other people who worked on it are getting sued, it doesn't end well, and unfortunately, after the release of this game, TimeGate suffered many layoffs. It's very unfortunate that so many people lost their jobs. A lot of people label any company associated with Aliens Colonial Marines as inherently evil and out to destroy the game industry. I don't feel the exact same way. Aliens Colonial Marines was a complete disaster, and it should never have happened. I think that Gearbox and Sega should definitely have a class action lawsuit against them, just to bring attention to the issue. I don't think that any corporation or any developing studio should be shut down because of this, because that'd just be absolutely silly. TimeGate has been behind great games, such as Section 8, and it would be a shame if one game actually tore down their entire studio. So, again, TimeGate has been in constant legal trouble over the course of 4 years or so. They've been in constant battle with South Peak where there have been a lot of overturned rulings back and forth, and money thrown in each and every direction. The question I really want to ask you guys, though, is Aliens Colonial Marines really that big of a screw-up to authorize the closing of multiple studios? I don't personally think it is. You can't shut down a studio for producing one really bad video game, because then the market would just suck and people wouldn't be taking risks. You need to realize that a lot of people, although Aliens Colonial Marines was completely false advertising, we need to realize that even with that in mind, it still was not big enough to constitute shutting down a lot of studios for it, and I think that's what people need to look at. I hope TimeGate is going to pull out of this, because they have made a lot of great games in the past, and I just hope that we can get through the Aliens drama in one piece as a gaming community. I think we have. It's been a while since Aliens Colonial Marines actually dropped, and we've done a lot to make sure that this won't happen again through the class action lawsuit. Hopefully we'll never see something like this again, but as time has shown, it probably will happen at least one more time in our lifetime, so just be on the lookout. Never buy a game straight off release, because you need to make sure that the advertising was legitimate. People looked at the trailer and the demo and thought of it as actual gameplay, and they had every reason to do that, but the problem is, developers have done this before, publishers have done this before, just not to the extent of Aliens Colonial Marines. Aliens Colonial Marines promised a lot of things that it didn't even come out with, and that's where a lot of gamers are getting very frustrated, and I can't really blame them. So, let's move on to our last topic of the day, and let's talk about some sales. It's a pretty great weekend to be a Steam user, and I can say that pretty definitively. We've seen some great sales coming out of Steam on the weekends, and this is another great example of that. So, first off, there is the Star Wars franchise bundle. You can get the whole pack for 50% off, taking it down to $50, and this will get you 12 items. Alternatively, you can pick up individual ones for 66% off inside of that bundle. Some ones to look for in there, I'd say that Star Wars Battlefront 2 is certainly something that you should be interested in. Star Wars The Force Unleashed 1, I wouldn't suggest 2. 2 was, I don't know, it didn't live up to standards of the first one. I thought the first one was personally better. Also, another one in there that's very good is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2. Those are the ones I would suggest that you take a look at. Again, all the individual titles are 66% off, and the whole bundle together is 50% off. So it's something to definitely take a look at. Another thing that you can pick up this weekend, which is absolutely crazy, is Tomb Raider for 50% off. It's kind of crazy that we're seeing this game on sale so quickly. It came out on March 5th, and only 2 months later we're seeing this game go down 50%. It's something that isn't seen a ton. I will grant that it's nothing completely new, but we're seeing a game that is certainly AAA, that is a $50 AAA title, that is 50% off only 2 months after release. Honestly, I think the reason they're doing this is to boost the sales, because this game had kind of poor sales right off the bat, and this has been unfortunate, but nonetheless, we are here. Alright, so Tomb Raider is 50% off, taking it down to $25 or your regional equivalent. You can get the Survival Edition for 50% off as well, taking it down to $29 or your regional equivalent once again. You can get the digital book, or you can get the whole Tomb Raider collection, which includes 10 items, basically every single Tomb Raider that is released on Steam, and that is 50% off, taking it down to $35 or your regional equivalent. It's honestly a great deal. I'm very surprised at how good a deal this really is. Only 2 months after release, I certainly suggest this, and it has been steadily at the top sellers list on Steam for quite a while now, at least as long as the sale has been up. So I hope you guys check out these sales. I'm very impressed by how well Steam has done with getting these sales going, and that's about it for this episode of the News Hub. So see you guys next week with episode number 4. See ya.